Radio Cairo presents Orphan's Day, a special coverage. Hello dear friends. Egypt's Orphan's Day is a national day in Egypt celebrated on the first Friday of April since 2004. It was founded by Orphan, Egypt's largest charitable organization. On this day, many events are held to allow the kids to enjoy and engage with society and also to fundraise for the orphanages. Today we have Diana Kinch, a British journalist, who will tell us about her experience of adopting 8 children.
Hi, my name is Diana Kinch. I'm a British journalist. I came to Brazil because I wanted to adopt a baby. I ended up adopting 8 children in Brazil because Brazil gave me that opportunity. I was working as a commodities journalist in London, and I'd heard that it was much easier to adopt in Brazil than in the UK. Basically, in the UK, I didn't qualify. I hadn't been married long enough, and I didn't own my own house. The rules on adoption were quite restrictive in those years, in the 80s. So I decided I had to come to Brazil. I was working at the time in London as a journalist on a publication about commodities covering Latin America, and I managed to convince the company that I worked for to send me to Rio so that I could open an office for them in Rio de Janeiro. And they agreed. So I arrived in Brazil in 1987, and in 89 I had the opportunity to adopt my first son, Raul. Altogether I adopted 8 children in Brazil between 1989 and 2011. 5 of them were newborn and 3 a little bit older, which was actually quite a challenge. 4 boys and 4 girls. So now I have Raul, who's 34, Daniel, his half-brother. I have Joseph and Simon, who are also half-brothers. I have Beatrice, Alice, Gabriella and Raquel, who are also half-sisters, and Raquel is just 13 years old. So I adopted them all because I really wanted to be a mum, and I hadn't managed to have my own child. I'd lost one during my pregnancy. I was working and I was able to employ people to help me. I had a lot of friends. I did have 2 Brazilian husbands, and so people were always around to help. I also tried to teach the kids to help me by helping each other, and generally they did that. So I adopted because I really wanted to be a mum, a biological instinct. But I also see adoption as a possible solution, at least a partial solution, to the problems of world overpopulation and unequal distribution of wealth and natural resources. I see this unequal distribution and fight for territory because of overpopulation as the root of most of the conflicts which we see these days in the world. Before I adopted, I really wanted to have my own child. But after starting to adopt, I perceived that really I could feel myself being totally satisfied, quite happy as an adoptive mum. And I even perceived that the world really doesn't need my own child, my own creation of flesh and blood. It would even be quite a narcissistic thing to insist on that, and unnecessary to spend a lot of money on fertility treatments to try to have my own child. I admit that I did also spend on doing one of those treatments, and it didn't work. So I came to the point where I felt that if I can give opportunities to a child that might possibly need those opportunities really badly and satisfy my own desire to be a mum at the same time, then that is perfectly okay for me. I'm happy with that. What worries me a bit is that the number of adoptions is falling in various countries, even though the number of children in care, normally under the care of the state, is growing. The rules, as I said, are quite restrictive in the United Kingdom, my home country. A recent study showed that in 2021, the number of adoptions in the UK fell to 2,870 for the whole year. That was the lowest number for 21 years, even though the number of children in care, under state care, rose to 90,000. I think there's, definitely something wrong there, So many children waiting for a long time to be placed with adoptive families, children who are in institutions, accumulating what they call baggage, emotional baggage, of having an unstable early childhood. If they could be placed more easily in permanent homes with adoptive parents who would be looking for them, then that would probably solve a lot of people's problems. So I stayed in Brazil for 25 years to, complete my adoption processes, and I bought a house where my kids could live and sent them to school. During that time, I did take the kids several times to the UK to visit their extended family, my parents who have since passed away, my sisters, my cousins, my friends. I think it was very important for them to have the opportunity to understand my culture and to understand their extended family as well. More of a family thing rather than just having a woman as their mum who spoke English, who was a little bit different in Brazil. I did find that the expenses were quite considerable. I had wanted to send all my kids to private schools in Brazil so they could get a decent standard of education, but it got to the point where I was spending my money on 5 school fees every month because 5 of them were going to school at a time, and this was sort of way beyond what was reasonably practical for me to spend, really. So I decided in 2012 to bring them back to England so that they could have an experience of the UK education system, which is good, but obviously it's, probably quite serious, but it's free. And so I brought them back and we stayed in my flat in London, where I previously let this flat out during my period in Brazil. And of course it was a little bit overcrowded until the older ones managed to move out and find their own place to live, which of course it's rather expensive. But of course we do have to take into account the cultural differences between Brazil and the UK.
Well, as your friends, we conclude our edition for tonight. Tell me again, best regards from my colleague Mayar Adel, and all the best from me, Hebatollah Sabbah.